Hello and welcome to our review podcast for our classification unit. We have 4 objectives for this unit that you need to be able to show mastery of on our test that's coming up. So as usual, let's go through them one by one. The first objective asks you to compare living, once living, and non-living things, and then tell me how they're different and give me examples. So living, if you are living, you do a number of processes, including you're made of cells, you have to grow, get energy, you have to be able to get rid of wastes, you have to be able to respond to your environment. You will need to know for your test 5 things that living things can do. So I guess my favorite things would be made of cells, respond to the environment, they change over time, they have to get energy, and they have to get rid of wastes. Examples are including things like you, trees, rabbits, tulips, basically anything that's living. Now virus is kind of an odd circumstance. Our next unit, we're going to get into the debate on whether it's living or not living. Officially, it's classified as non-living, but it can do actually a lot of the same living processes that living things do, but there's one that it can't. So keep that in mind for later. We're going to discuss and see where you fall out on the debate. If something is once living, that means it used to be able to do all the processes, but it can't anymore. Basically, it's dead. One thing that's still applicable is the things are made of cells. So like a piece of wood, still made out of tree cells, or paper that's been made from wood, also made of cells. Let's see, blood, a leaf that's fell on the ground, milk. Basically, if it comes from living things and it was no longer attached or no longer there, it's no longer living, so we would classify it as once living. Like once upon a time it was living. Non-living was never able to do the processes of living things, not all of them. It's also not made of cells. They are made of molecules, but these would be things like a pen, a rock, a stone, a nylon thread, a beach ball, steel, basically things that were never alive. Objective 2 asks you to make a classification system based on observation. We can categorize non-living things pretty basically, like hard and soft, basically looking at structure. If, for example, I took these 6 toys, I could make a group a lot of different ways. But the 2 groups that jump out at me is whether they have stripes or no stripes. So notice that the 2 on either end would be in my no stripe group, and the 4 in the middle would be in the stripes. For more specific instructions on how to get or how to make a dichotomous key and a branching key, see the Classify Your Treasures videos. On your test, you will actually need to be able to make both kinds of keys. I'll give you 5 objects and you have to draw out the key. So be sure to watch that one as well. In general, it has to be based on structure. It provides data, it's observable evidence, and basically we need to be able to identify them. So looking at this group of pictures, there are a lot of things in there. How would you group them? I see a way I could do. I could group them as a group of office supplies or not office supplies, and I put the pencil and the push pin in the office supplies. I could group them in tools and not tools, where the garden rake and the wrench and the pliers would be in a separate group from the rest. Oh, and the screwdriver. Sorry, I'd have the screwdriver in there too. I could do toys versus not toys, and the toy plane and the toy car would be in a group and the rest would be. Essentially, you will need to find a way to divide a number of objects into 2 groups and explain how you put each one in each group. For number 3, objective 3, you need to tell me the rules for classification, how we gain knowledge in science using it, and be able to show that you can classify things in different ways. So classification is essentially a tool. It's based on patterns or things that we observe. When we make a dichotomous key, have 2 choices provided, but do not use opinions, and we need to use consistent characteristics. So for example, the edges of a leaf would be a great thing to use to classify, but the number of leaves on a tree would not. The edges of the leaf is consistent, but the number of the leaves on the tree can change based on environmental conditions. And then we wouldn't want to say pretty, because pretty is an opinion, and my pretty is not the same as your pretty. So no opinions, and be consistent. With classification systems and scientific knowledge, it helps us to learn about the world. It's nice to know whether the spider that is in your house is dangerous or safe. It doesn't give you an overload of information, but is able to help you pick out patterns or help you pick out things that are similar. Also tells you the names of things that you may or may not know, and they can even be like an expert in your pocket to help you know more than what you would have known on your own. So again, keep in mind that there are lots of different ways to classify. Aristotle lived a long time ago and thought there were only plants and animals based on what he could observe. Now we know that there are more kingdoms than that, the 6 kingdoms that we will be getting into for our next unit. So lots of different ways to classify. And then one more time, here's our general rules. I know, so much repetition, huh? Use observations, don't give opinions, and be very specific. So don't say small or large, but less than or more than 30 centimeters. For the classification of living things, the levels go domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Now we practice saying that fairly fast, so chances of you having it memorized now are pretty good. You could also use a mnemonic like dumb kings play chess on fat guys' stomachs, whatever helps you remember the order. Things to know about it though. Starts broad and goes very specific. So domain is a very broad, a whole lot of different things fit in that category, while species is extremely specific. For the scientific name, we use the genus and the species. So scientific names are 2 names, and then we capitalize the genus but do not capitalize the species. If something has the same scientific name, like if organism A is a Homo sapien and organism B is a Homo sapien, they are the same species. They're both people. If, for example, something is in the same genus, that means they share everything else above it in common. So they'd have the same family and order and class and phylum and kingdom and domain. So there's a lot of common characteristics the farther down you go. Objective number 4 is basically say, if I give you the scheme or the classification system already done, be able to name and classify what's in it. So this is also called a dichotomous key that you've learned how to make. Good traits to use again, color markings on birds, edges of leaves, something that doesn't change. Patterns, maybe not the number of leaves. So here's one example of a dichotomous key, a branching key. Let's say I'm looking at an animal and I want to know what it is. So I'm going to follow the steps. Let's say it has a hard outer covering, so I go to the top. It has 6 legs, but no wings. So by this key, it has to be an ant, so I can follow the path that way. If we look at the second key, we're looking at the pictures. The first one says the leaves are scale-like or the leaves are needle-like, with some other things. Those look very needle-like, so I would do 1B. So I would say go to 2. Then it says the leaves come out singly or they come out in 2 and more. Well, on the picture on the right, it shows me they come out 1 at a time. So that tells me to go to 3. Then it says leaves are sharp at the end or leaves are round at the end. Now I would have to guess that those look pretty sharp to me. So I would call it a spruce, and that's what I would name it. Let's look at this other one. Same key, but different picture. So the leaves are still needle-like, and I go to 2, but this time the picture on the right shows me that they come out in bundles, and there's 3 of them in there, so then it would have to be the pine. So same key, but 2 different organizations, or 2 different organisms, pardon me. This one is a harder key. There's a lot of terms on there that you may or may not know. So let's pick organism number 2, because I like starfish. But I don't know which one is a starfish, because it doesn't say starfish on there anyway. So first one, it says organism is symmetrical or not symmetrical. Symmetrical means that you can draw a line through it and it's a mirror image on both sides. I can do that with number 2. So the instructions tell me to go to 2. Now it says bilaterally or radial. I know it's radially symmetry because I can do multiple lines of symmetry through the center. So go with me if that's a new term for you. So it says go to 5. Then it says 5 rays or arms or transparent with many tentacles. So this one has 5 rays, 5 arms. So it must be phylum Echinodermata. So that would be how I would identify what phylum a starfish goes in. For this one, the terms are kind of tough, but it still always presents you with 2 choices that you have to choose from. Here's one more that's a little bit easier. Let's try to identify the first one on the left. So one says horizontal or no horizontal. I don't see any horizontal stripes on that guy, so I'm going to go to 4. Polka dots or no polka dots? There's polka dots. So her name is Laura Farm. Now those kind of keys, some are silly and some are real, but I should be able to give you a key and you should be able to identify the organisms in there. Well, that's it. That is the information that you need to show mastery of for our test for next time. Again, make sure you watch the other video and come see me if you have questions. Thanks, and good luck.